Alright y'all, so today we're going to kind of explore what I think is happening with the AR635 pressure washer. Now I don't have one. In one of my previous videos I showed that I used to have one of the AR630 V2s. I had similar problems with that from what they're experiencing testing the 635, but I can accurately replicate the problem that they're having with my 240 volt 20 amp commercial pressure washer that I built to replace my 630. But so I'm going to do a little testing. I've got my Karcher K1700. That's kind of my backup. You know, if I need to go anywhere, I'll take it with me. Occasionally we'll do some mobile stuff. It's pretty rare, but that's what I use that for. I had duals of that previously, and those do work, by the way. You don't need a check valve to run dual Karcher K1700. So if you're looking for 3 GPM on the cheap, and it'll do 1700 PSI. So it works great for like, if you're doing, you know, heavy duty washing. Dual Karcher K1700s is almost impossible to beat. You can get them for around $200, and then the fittings cost another 100. But anyway, if you want a video on how you set that up, let me know. So what I'm going to do, I've got a foam cannon set up with a 1.1 orifice and a 1.25 orifice, and then a third with a 1.4, which is way too much for a small pressure washer like this. It's only rated at 1.2 GPM. So, you know, we would never use a 1.4 orifice. That's why foam cannons don't come with them. But for our larger pressure washers that we're having, the active 2.3, 630 V2, and now the 635, which is, I think, requires a 1.6 or a 1.65. I haven't tested it, but I know fine detailing was having good success with 1.65. We'll get to testing with the Karcher K1700. I'll show you my setup here real quick. Okay, so I've got the Karcher K1700 behind me, and then this is set up to go to my, this is a Miko hose reel, and this is a Blue Shield one-wire hose. I tried the Kevlar one. I didn't like it because it wasn't a smooth jacket. I prefer the smooth jacket just because it moves across your textured driveway a lot better. So if they offered the Kevlar in a smooth jacket, I get it. You know, I tried Josh V's 1/4 inch hose. That's too restrictive for my 3.5 GPM. And something I've also found is some guns are restricted, so I keep going back to the SGS 35. But anyway, so you know, it's just coming off my garden hose into here. There. So I went through and sized out all my orifices here. So I've got a 125, a 14, and a 11. Now I keep 2 of every one of them, so they're all already installed. And so I have the 125 and the 1.1 set up here, and then this one is going to be our 1.4. So we're going to compare all the foam of these today, and then we'll do it with the Karcher K1700. Then we'll switch over to my 3.5 or GPM. All right, so I got my 2 foam cannons set up. One is a 1.1 and one is a 1.4. So we're going to get kind of the extreme example here. Again, both of these are using incredible suds, pre-diluted 25-1. This is version 1. I haven't finished running through it yet. Just to show our PSI here. So you can see the 1.4 is struggling to build pressure. And so that's just gone too far on the low pressure, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. As you can see, this is the problem everybody's having with the AR635 because we're too low of pressure now. The flow is the same, but the pressure isn't there. And so most foam cannons have a minimum working PSI spec of around 1,000 PSI. And we're well below that now. I don't know what we have, 300-400 or something. So I'm going to swap this to a 1.3 orifice. And all right, so I got my 1.3 orifices out here. All right, I'm going to rinse and dry it real quick. So this is our 1.3 orifice. That's around 600 PSI. Let's see how this foam. Alright, there's our 1.3. Now we're back to our 1.1. I'll just show you the PSI real quick. You can see a much thicker foam here on the 1.1. Timer has started, 5 minutes. Let's see if we have any difference in dwell time. Doesn't want to stick on that soap. It seems like the soap is actually a little thicker on the 1.3 side, but 2 minutes and 27 seconds, so we're halfway there. All right, time's up. Let's rinse. So to me, it actually looks like the right side held on a little better with that 1.4 orifice, so thicker foam isn't always better. Okay, so with Karcher K1700, we saw that a 1.4 orifice fell below the minimum threshold for pressure. That was about like 500 PSI at this 1.4 GPM that this Karcher K1700 does when you start to size up the orifice. Now the 1.3 was right on the edge, and we actually saw that the foam dwelled better. It kind of put a better sheet on the surface. It wasn't so thick and running down. It was able to kind of wet out the surface better. I'm gonna try one of these 1.3s. Because I noticed, you know, if you go under the minimum recommended size on that AR635 V2, it freaks out. It makes a lot of crazy noises, and it really doesn't like it, and it overamps. I'm gonna see if my machine does that with the 1.3. You know, I mean, the pump is rated to handle like 3,000 PSI. The motor's not strong enough to do that, but the unloader is gonna save it from overamping. That's how I have the unloader set, so that it can't go over 22 amps. So, we'll see what happens. And so I've already got the water shut off. I've got the pressure out of the line. So all I need to do. Nope, sorry, wrong quick neck. Getting water all over my toolbox. I've just got my Costco here to dry everything up. All right, this is all hooked up. I'm gonna turn the water back on. Okay. All right, so this one, I've talked about it before. It does not hold pressure in the line until it senses flow. As you can see, it's just hitting 2,100 PSI. This is a 2.5 nozzle, which should be way too small for this thing. This is a 5.0. Just under 2,000 with a 5.0. And then this is a 7. 1,100 PSI with a 7. I would like a 7.5, but I don't quite make one. I don't gain any flow from that. The difference between a universal motor and a 4-pole induction motor is the RPMs are controlled on an induction motor. So it's only going to spin that 1,700 RPMs. The reason you gain more GPM on a universal motor by changing your orifice around is because those universal motors are uncontrolled. So you can hear this change in sound as they, you know, speed up or slow down in their RPM because they're freed up to have less resistance on them from increasing your orifice size. So something to keep in mind. You know, if you're getting an induction motor like a Any of the AR pressure washers, the active 2.3 is an induction, the 2.0 is a universal. Um, so yeah, this cartridge is universal. All your Rylebys are going to be universal. So that's why, they can gain a little bit as you increase your nozzle size. So this, with an induction motor, you're wholly limited on the pump. So I sized it to a 3.5 GPM pump so that I could get around 2100 PSI for cleaning concrete, cleaning heavy machinery, stuff like that. So anyway, all right, let's go ahead and get to foaming. Had a little technological difficulties. My USB cord went bad on my mic connecting to my phone. But anyway, so let's go ahead and check see which ones we got here. Okay, so that's going to be the 1.8. All right, that's going to be the 1.3. So let's go ahead and get to foaming. On to the next one. I mean, they both went on stupid thick. 3.5 GPM doesn't play. I'm going to show you what the 1.9 does. All right, so I drilled this out myself, 1.9. I even tried the 2.0 just to make sure, because it's such a drastic drop in pressure. So we can see 600 PSI there. All right, I got this ready to go, but we're going to let this finish. So we got 3 minutes, 40 seconds. All right, timer's up. So to me, the back definitely held on better. I see far less dry patches on the back, which was the 1.8. So same thing happened here. The lower PSI that we could get seemed to wet out the surface better and dwell better. So I would just go the biggest nozzle that you can still foam every time. It's easier on your machine. Your foam's going to dwell longer. It's not going to go as thick. It's not going to look as cool right at the beginning, but it wasn't that drastic of a difference. Let's go ahead and rinse it. just a quick sneak peek. The first spray sealant detail spray test is still running on the rest of the car. And a couple of these are looking pretty good. Tech 584 is still holding on. I think we're, what, 3 months in at this point. The Griots is still holding on. But the Garage Therapy Sigma is looking great. Ethos Resist on the other side also looking really good. So those two are in the lead. But anyway, let's wrap this up. So let me get the 1.9 for y'all to see. Knob is all the way up. Let's show you the PSI. I put some pressure on. Okay, here's the PSI for the 1.9. See, it's only getting 600. It's just soapy water going on there. You know, we can dive into final thoughts here, so. All right, so we saw the 1.8 got great foam. It dwelled the longest. The 1.3 worked, and it did not make my pressure washer scream. The 1.9, though, just going up that 0.1 millimeter, dropped our PSI from like 1150 to 600. And so it's just like overwhelming that. There's not enough pressure in there to cause things to work in the Venturi. And so it just spits water everywhere. It still draws from the tube. If I took it off, and I didn't do this on camera, but I put my finger on the ball and I can feel it sucking from the ball. So it's still drawing soap. It just doesn't foam. And now I tried this on all of my foam cannons. I've got an MJJC Pro V2, an MTM, the Armor Drift, the Rip Clean, and the Real Use, and they've all done the same thing. Going from that 1.8 to 1.9, it just puts them over the edge. And now, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody doing these tests with a pressure gauge for their foam cannon. Everybody checks them with the nozzles, but nobody checks with the foam cannon. You know, a pressure gauge is a direct representation of how much load is on the motor, right? So if we're targeting a certain PSI for the motor, like, you know, if the manufacturer says use a 4.5 and you know your PSI is 1100 at 4.5, well then, you know, you should be targeting that same 1100 PSI with your foam cannon. And so, you know, a pressure gauge to size your orifices. And again, you know, I made all these with that drill bit set from Harbor Freight. I'll link it again in the description. It's in 0.1 millimeter increments. Now there's two 1.9s. One is actually a 1.95. So I tried both the 1.9 and the 1.95 bit. I drilled out both of those and they both did the same thing. So, so it wasn't like one, you know, if one bit was off, and then I tried the 2.0 and the 2.0 wouldn't fit into either of the holes that I drilled. So I triple checked just to make sure that, you know, the bit that I was using wasn't too, like, improperly sized. So kind of the conclusion here is, like, the lower flow machines can get away with lower PSI, but as our flow increases, we need higher PSI to keep that Venturi atomized. And so that's kind of it, you know. I mean, like, if what may have happened in this is just my speculation with the AR635, why that made it to market. You know, if they tested a foam cannon PSI, say with an AR630, right, and it's putting out 2.3 GPM, and you know they were able to get it to foam at 800 PSI, let's say, then they were like, okay, this will work at 800 PSI. This will do 1,000, so we can make it foam, and here's the orifice to do it. Well, then, you know, they didn't account for the fact that, you know, this need for PSI increases as your GPM goes up. So anyway, so keep your orifice sizes down as low as you can keep them while still foaming. You know, it's going to put less load on your machine, less amperage on your motor, less PSI on the pump head, and less electrical draw for your house. So it's a win-win. Your foam's going to dwell longer, so keep your PSI down. If you've got an AR635, you've bought one, and you don't know what to do, what I would go do is buy a 1.6, a 1.65, and a 1.7. They're all available on Amazon. I'll put links all in the description. And you know, one of them's like the 1.6 may work fine, or it may make your motor scream or your unloader scream. I think it's the unloader making the sound, but anyway. And then maybe the 1.6 foam's great, and then the 1.7 does that, what we just saw the 1.9 doing for me. You know, I'm only 0.5 GPM higher here, so you know, it makes sense that maybe 1,000 PSI will foam for the AR635 or the Active 3.0, whereas mine is 1,100. So anyway, this is all speculation, but this is what this testing looks like. You know, I don't have a machine in between anymore. I just have the Karcher and my custom build, but 3.5 GPM to 1.5 GPM shows some drastic differences. And also, I haven't used a 1.5 GPM machine in a long time. Just how much more time it took to foam and rinse. Like, it was twice the time, easily. You know, and I mean, I know 1.5 to 3.5, that's over a 2x increase, but it doesn't always feel like it scales that way. But anyway, got any questions, leave them in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate y'all.